Hello, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be here with us today. We're very excited to be hosting Hillary. She graciously is sharing some of her work with us today. Hillary is the monitoring coordinator for the Marine Debris Program and is based in Seattle. She has a bachelor's in biology with a concentration in environmental studies from Albion College in Michigan and a master's in ecology from the University of Washington School of Environmental and Forest Resources. Her background is in monitoring and public participation in science, and she leads the Marine Debris Monitoring and Assessment Project. Prior to joining the project, Hillary led other citizen and community science projects at the University of Washington while studying barriers to use and best practices for citizen science as a research and engagement tool. Most recently, she was the science coordinator for the Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey team. She founded and led the University of Washington Citizen Science Community of Practice. And since 2012, she has been involved with the Association for Advancing Participatory Science, formerly known as the Citizen Science Association. We're very excited to have her today, and we're going to turn it over to her next.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. Before I get started, I just want to acknowledge that in the audience, we have a variety of different folks of different backgrounds who are interested in and connected to this talk for different reasons. So we have MDMAP participants, we have project coordinators from other similar projects, we have marine debris enthusiasts, government staff, as well as members of the public. And my aim is to speak to each of you and to steer away from any jargon that's specific to one segment of the audience. And that might mean that I'll share information that seems obvious to you, but would be a new piece of the puzzle for someone else. My hope is to provide something of value for everyone. So let's begin with a story. For a little over 4 years, from 2014 to 2018, through a project with the partners and funders shown here, a dedicated group of 10 volunteers surveyed 4 beaches on the coast of Virginia every single month. Their 207 surveys showed that balloon-related litter and clam aquaculture netting were 2 of the most common items found on their beaches. Both of these types of debris are documented to cause harm to wildlife through entanglement and ingestion. The survey results, along with other volunteer collected data from programs like the Ocean Conservancy's International Coastal Cleanup, contributed to outreach and justification for advancing policy to prevent intentional balloon releases. There was a law passed in Virginia in 2021. The results also led to staff from the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program and Clean Virginia Waterways to meet with leaders in the clam aquaculture industry to discuss voluntary measures that would lead to fewer derelict clam nets on Virginia's beaches. This is the power of monitoring. It is an engaging and empowering way to gain firsthand experience with the issue of marine debris while collecting authentic scientific data that can lead to positive action. I'll share a few other examples throughout the talk. But first, back to the basics. What is marine debris? So the definition for the purposes of the Marine Debris Act, which established NOAA's Marine Debris Program in 2006, is any persistent solid material that is manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally disposed of or abandoned into the marine environment or Great Lakes. Kind of a mouthful, but generally there is consensus that our trash doesn't belong in the marine environment. There are a number of negative impacts, including wildlife entanglement and ghost fishing, ingestion of marine debris by wildlife, habitat damage, introduction of non-native species to new environments, economic loss, vessel damage and navigation hazards, And then there's the hot topic of potential impact to human health, which is a really active area of study. The mission of NOAA's marine debris program, where I work, is to identify and determine the sources of, assess, prevent, and reduce and remove marine debris. We carry out that mission through 6 interrelated program pillars, which include prevention, removal, research, emergency response, regional coordination, and monitoring and detection. And much of this work is implemented by external partners that are supported by our program. When we talk about monitoring, we mean making observations or taking measurements repeatedly over time and geography to understand the patterns of what we're measuring. The Marine Debris Monitoring and Assessment Project is the Marine Debris Program's main monitoring effort. We also refer to it as MDMAP, which is what you'll hear me say for the rest of the talk. It was launched in 2012 as a standardized method to document the amount and type of macro marine debris, so things that are about the size of a bottle cap or bigger within a 100-meter stretch of beach. So it is a method, and it is also a network of data contributors and users from around the world. Data contributors include individual members of the public, environmental NGOs with volunteer programs, resource management agency personnel from NOAA and other agencies, students in school groups, as well as professional researchers from academia. I want to acknowledge and thank these partners for their dedication to tackling marine debris through monitoring. So MDMAP's goals are to detect changes in the amount and type of marine debris, to guide and evaluate prevention of marine debris, and in turn inspiring action, and to provide tools to partners to contribute to a larger standardized data set while meeting their own goals. So notice I haven't made a mention of scale here. These goals can be met for a single 100-meter stretch of beach, a national park, a state, the whole US coastline, even the world. Any success in meeting the goal is dependent on the data collection at the scale of interest. All are possible with this same method and set of tools, but the scale is set by the people who are contributing the data. We'll revisit this topic a little more toward the end of my talk. So what is the method? Participants pick out a section of beach and they establish at least a 100-meter area to monitor. So each time they conduct a survey, they subsample that 100-meter stretch in 5-meter transects that run perpendicular to the water, from the water's edge to the back, whatever the kind of first barrier is. And they record information about the presence of other human visitors, things like trash receptacles, whether they're full or not, or present at all, freshwater inflow, all sorts of things that could correlate to the source and abundance of marine debris that is present. And within each 5-meter transect, participants search for debris 2.5 meters at a time and count and categorize all items that are larger than 2.5 centimeters, so that bottle cap size. They have the option to take photos, which are later used to verify debris classifications and ensure consistency between surveyors and faithfulness to the protocol. So as you can see, it's not as simple as like pushing a button or taking a casual walk and just opportunistically counting trash, or even doing something like a beach cleanup and tallying what you find. The method prescribes things like how many people can search for debris, how big of an area to search, and even how small things can be in order to count as debris. This requires setting expectations, as Turtle Island Restoration Network does in their advertising of MDMAP surveys with the statement, think beach cleanup, but with more detailed procedures. These procedures can take time to learn. They take time to set up and coordination for consistency, all of which can be a barrier to getting and staying involved, especially for volunteers who may or may not have a scientific background. So why all the restrictions? Because the goal is to identify and detect the amount of marine debris and if it's changing over time or across geography. So the data have to be comparable. And those patterns are what inform and assess actions. And it turns out how we count makes a difference in how much we count. Early analysis of MDMAP data showed that there was some noise in the data set caused by variability in how people were implementing the protocol and in the ways that the protocol kind of allowed for that variability. So NOAA undertook an evaluation of the protocol to determine how to best optimize for greater comparability across the data set. And working with the Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey team at the University of Washington, which is where I was at the time, we hypothesized a number of factors that might influence what gets counted during a survey versus missed. So of the things that are there, how many do we see and how many accidentally get overlooked? Some of these factors are readily controlled through rigor and adherence to the protocol, but others are about the survey environment and even the debris itself. So we tested our questions by staging fake surveys. We varied a bunch of different aspects of the survey protocol and the survey environment and the debris to see how they influenced the rate of detection during a survey. So again, how many things are seen, how many things are missed. We seeded known amounts and types of debris, so we knew exactly what was possible to find relative to what was actually found. And here are the results. Whenever I describe them, I kind of laugh to myself because they seem so obvious. We found that debris that is closer to a person is more likely to be seen by them. We found that surveys with 3 people surveying find more debris than surveys with 1 or 2 people. We found that brightly colored debris, like things that are red and blue, are more likely to be counted than duller colors like brown and gray. And we found that larger items are more likely to be counted than smaller ones, and that surveys on sand had higher rates of detection than on cobble or vegetation and other more complex kind of searching backgrounds. So the results were pretty intuitive, but they actually underscored the importance of the methodology in our ability to track and compare amounts of marine debris in different conditions. So results aren't shocking, but to illustrate the impact, a red playing card or a blue bottle cap on a sandy beach located about 2 meters from somebody doing a survey will be counted close to 100% of the time. Whereas something like a brown bottle cap, same distance, same background, will be counted less than half the time. So maintaining a consistent amount of effort ensures that the rate of detection is also consistent. So we're more likely to see the patterns that we're looking for in the data if they're there. And those patterns that we're looking for are measurable changes in the amount of marine debris. So this gets me to a more general point. The method is only as rigorous and standardized as it needs to be to meet our project's goals. No more, no less. Too much and our project would be in rigor mortis. So while we're strict about the amount of effort that goes into searching for marine debris and over how big of an area, we restrain ourselves from asking a lot of nice to have information that the scientists in us might want to have just in case. And we allow for flexibility for elsewhere in the project so that participants can adapt to their own goals and conditions. And that is because our third goal is participant and partner centered. So we continuously gather and integrate input from our network to understand folks' motivations and barriers, and then adapt and iterate the resources that we provide accordingly. Outcomes from that feedback include things like developing real-time data visualizations for instant feedback from a survey, providing early and frequent feedback from the data verification process so that people know they're on the right track with following the instructions, and we can kind of correct course right away if we need to, and sharing stories regularly about how others are using the data. The areas where we offer flexibility and adaptability in the protocol are also informed by community input. So here's an example. We found early on in developing the protocol that doing 4 transects is typically enough to get a reliable average of the amount and types of marine debris within a 100-meter site. And that's a pretty manageable amount of effort with a small team, 1 or 2 people, even on a beach with a lot of marine debris. But what about places with a lot less debris or with many more participants, like large school groups or employee volunteer days? Can they participate in MDMAP? Yes. They can survey more than 4 transects, up to the 20 possible. And we have a number of folks that do this. Another place where we balance standardization with flexibility is the taxonomy of marine debris. So that's basically the list that people use to count and classify the things that they find. So in MDMAP, the list is a standard set of material and item types that are aimed to be fairly self-evident and indicative of an item's use or associated activity. Like, is it a single-use plastic item? Is it associated with fisheries? Is it kind of consumer-oriented debris, things we use every day, things that might be left behind by beachgoers? Applicable globally, so not just specific to one place, and then concise enough to not be unwieldy and hard to apply. So this is all so that we have apples to apples data that's comparable, where differences in counts of items are attributable to different amounts and not just different ways that things were counted. So a cup is counted as a cup over here, and not a cup here and a beverage container over here. But items that can be linked to local sources, which again is kind of the main point here, are often a bit more specific. So for example, like the clam aquaculture netting from the story that I very first mentioned, that's not applicable globally. But it was a really specific source locally that was important to track. So the way we tackle that is to have an optional sub-level of item types that are completely customizable. You can see some examples on the screen here. One example from the early days of MDMAP were an abundance of shotgun wads and shells on beaches within the Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary in California. So shotgun wads were not on the item list and would have otherwise been absorbed and basically invisible in the data set in the category plastic other, making them impossible to quantify and track. For folks that are unfamiliar, shotgun wads are the casing for shotgun ammunition, and when a gun is shot, this plastic wrapper is projected along with the metal ammunition. far away from the gun, wherever the ammunition goes. And because of the concern about how many were being found, along with some other locally specific items, custom items were created based on that need. And then by tracking them specifically, the pattern of shotgun wads on beaches was specific to locations near waterfowl hunting. So that pattern became apparent. Armed with these results, staff from Greater Farallones Association and Root Solutions, and with funding from NOAA, reached out to the local waterfowl hunting community. Their conversations actually led to co-designing a campaign for improved management of ammunition waste within the local refuges where waterfowl hunting was happening. And they piloted signage to raise awareness and actually provided really creative disposal receptacles. So if you encounter one of these displays, you'll be encouraged to throw away wads and cases by voting for your favorite duck. Linked to the idea of flexibility is that we try to reduce barriers to participation without sacrificing the rigor needed to accomplish our overarching goals for the data. And that includes providing technical support, including one-on-one support, in-person training when our staff capacity allows. And then many of our grantees with the Marine Debris Program integrate MDMAP surveys into their projects, and then they're able to use funds for coordination time, travel time, and to acquire supplies. We also provide central resources that groups leverage through what we call the monitoring toolbox. And this toolbox contains training videos in English and Spanish. And I'll note that Spanish translation of all of our materials is something that we're working on based on requests from community members. We have also developed specific resources for educators in the form of an interactive website. So this guide for educators provides ideas for leveraging different aspects of MDMAP to teach curriculum, as well as complementary activities that build on the MDMAP experience, like exploring and finding patterns in the data, as well as developing action projects so that students can work on preventing marine debris in their own communities. We worked with both formal and informal educators who have approached the Marine Debris Program over the years looking to get involved, but kind of needing a little bit of extra support to translate the method into a classroom or student-friendly activity. And so their testing and feedback were essential. So thanks to any of them that are in the audience. The toolbox also contains protocol documents and data sheets, as well as a compendium of different ways and products and kind of stories of how the data have been used. And then access to the data entry and access portal. So when people collect data, they have the option to use either paper data sheets, then enter it after the fact, or they can enter data through a browser-based application while in the field, as long as they have access to the internet. We're presently working on an offline mobile option that will allow people who are in more remote locations with limited cell service to use phones or tablets. Once a survey has been entered, the surveys are reviewed by NOAA staff before being published to the public side of the database, where they can then be accessed either in spreadsheet form or viewable in a number of interactive summaries. So the first of those summaries is debris composition. which is a display of the proportion of items by material and item type. So this summary can be shown for a single survey. What did I find today? All surveys from a single site. What is the most abundant at my beach? Or a selection of sites, like all the surveys from a single organization or within a state, everything in Texas. This allows folks to compare what's common in one place to another. The other summary displays debris amounts over time. So here, as an example, and the dots are the average number of items per 100 meters of beach within a given month. The blue wash around the dots is the variability around that average, or the standard error. So these graphs can be displayed again for a single site or for a filtered set of sites, and can display all debris or be filtered by a specific material or item type. So all plastic or plastic bags, for example. So this allows folks to see if there's a measurable kind of before and after difference for things like an intervention, an outreach campaign, a new policy that's been implemented. It can also allow for comparing two locations under different policy regimes. So this place has container deposit legislation that encourages recycling. This place doesn't. Can you see a difference in the amount of containers on the beach, beverage containers on the beach? So something similar was done by partners at Pacific Whale Foundation in Hawaii, looking at plastic bag bans and cigarette ordinances. So their studies were published in Marine Pollution Bulletin. You can find links to this on the monitoring toolbox. What they did was monthly surveys at 2 beaches on Maui with similar characteristics. Before, so from 2013 to 2014, and after, in 2018, a tobacco-free policy went into place affecting one of the sites. They saw a reduction in cigarette butts at both places post-policy period, and no evidence of an effect specific to the policy implementation. So they contrasted that in this most recent study with that of their previous study, which actually did find that a 2011 ban on single-use plastic bags was very successful in reducing the number of plastic bags found on nearby beaches. So their results pointed to outreach and education, as well as enforcement, being essential to reducing marine debris alongside passing policy. So before I wrap up, I want to share a bit about where we're aiming with MDMAP over the next decade. So it's been really impactful when conducted by partners to detect localized patterns, and I've shared a few of those examples. These partners have translated results from their surveys into meaningful actions to understand and prevent marine debris. But what about at a larger scale? We're frequently asked questions like, how big is the problem in the US? Is it getting better or worse? And it's been recommended that NOAA establish a nationwide baseline of marine debris to compare and measure change against. To, for example, look at the effectiveness of a potential international policy or treaty to reduce marine debris. So scaling up beyond these local individual efforts that I've described through public participation is a challenge. There are big gaps that are hard to fill given the vastness of the coastline. Lots of areas are really remote and have low population density, limited accessibility, and also because all of the supports that we have in place to help people be successful in collecting and using the data require time and effort, not just by the people participating, but for folks like me in the role of a project coordinator. So our success in our recruitment could become our failure if we are no longer able to provide training and be responsive to questions or review and ensure data quality. So although there are great benefits to partnering with the public, this approach isn't the right fit for every single data need, and a monitoring program can actually integrate data collected from a number of different sources using the same method. Which brings me to another MDMAP initiative we're working towards, which I think of as one field method, two approaches, where one is kind of bottom-up driven, that's MDMAP past, present, and future, and the other which requires more of a top-down vision. So we plan to continue supporting partner-driven use of MDMAP and finding ways of reducing barriers to engagement. But we've also developed a design for establishing regional baselines and trends through a rigorous statistical process. And accomplishing this design will likely require a mix of public participation and other means, especially to sustain a subset over time through partnerships. So the intent is that the two approaches will complement each other, allowing for an understanding of marine debris that is more comprehensive and influential than either approach could achieve alone. With that, thanks so much for your time and attention, and I'm really happy to take any questions.
Hillary, thank you so much for your presentation. This was fantastic. I would encourage everybody attending today, if you have any questions, you will see the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. And feel free to put any questions in there that come up. We'll leave that up throughout the duration of our Q&A session. So let me get this started. All right, and Hillary, it looks like we have one question so far. So let me get that up on the screen. This question says, can MDMAP be used in the freshwater tidal section of the Delaware River?
Yeah, hi, Zach. Possibly. The only criteria is a shoreline that is walkable and is at least 100 meters long. So there absolutely are folks that use the method in freshwater systems and riverine systems. There just needs to be some form of a beach.
Great, thank you so much. And the next question that we have says, thank you, Hillary, for a great presentation. Is NOAA working with external partners like aquariums to encourage and support their participation?
Yes. Yeah, we've worked with a number of aquaria programs. Mostly folks come to us and then we support them in being successful, but absolutely, there's just a whole suite of different groups that are public facing and have aligned missions that we work with.
Great, thank you so much. We have, let's see, I just saw a question come in, so let me get that up on the screen now. This question says, what are some of the most surprising or unique pieces of debris that have ever been reported?
I'm thinking of two things come to mind right away. So very recently, actually, a group out of Texas, the Galveston Bay Foundation, surveys a bunch of different sites. And on a recent survey, they found a class ring from the early 1980s. It had the high school name and the date on it, and they were actually able to reach out to the Alumni Association for that high school and track down the original owner, who had lost the ring right after they got it during a family picnic over 30 years ago. And so that was a really cool story. The other is that you'd be surprised how many dentures are found. I don't know how people are losing them and why they're ending up in the water, but we get a lot of dentures.
That definitely has to be a surprising piece of marine debris, I have to say. All right, thanks so much. We're going on to the next question that we have here. Says, this is great, Hillary. I am working with a group in BC that is interested in collecting marine debris data. Should we focus on the segments on the map that have been identified, or is any beach open for surveying?
Great question. Any beach is open for surveying. For continuity and kind of a long-term data set, if you are near a site that was previously monitored but maybe has winked out because the folks that were doing it have moved on, picking up one of those historic sites would be great. But there's no wrong reason to pick a beach. So if there's a place that is more convenient or you're more interested in, you can also start a new place.
Great, thanks so much. All right, this says, thank you so much for your presentation. I may have missed it, but how accurate do you think this method is in representing marine debris data?
Yeah, I think it's very accurate, or about as accurate as it needs to be. And we have, I think, kind of what I was trying to emphasize in the talk is that we've invested a lot in trying to assess how accurate it is and then improve how accurate it is so that the data that is produced is better fit for its purpose, while not being so cumbersome to accomplish that nobody wants to do it. So that's kind of the fine line that we're always walking. But the research that we've done into the methodology, I think, shows that as long as folks are following the protocol, we get what we need.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next question here says, how do you dispose of the debris once you have analyzed the data? This can be very costly, and I wonder how you deal with this issue.
Yeah, that is a great question, and there's not a single answer. It's really up to the folks that are participating. We, of course, encourage responsible disposal. Sometimes disposal isn't possible at all, and so we don't require a cleanup to happen or all debris to be cleaned up during a survey. Folks note the extent that they were able to remove debris, but kind of large scale complex removal and disposal of debris is a whole different topic. You can check out, actually, the Marine Debris Program website has a lot of great resources on that topic.
Great, thank you so much, Hillary. I am not seeing any more questions. Oh, just kidding. We just got one more in. Hold on, let me get this up. All right, this question says, how did you change and or update your data collection forms post-COVID? We have seen a significant change in debris composition.
Yeah, we actually, so I described sort of the taxonomy of how items are classified. And of course, what was common when the list was created is not necessarily what's common now. New things are always being invented or their frequency of use changes. So, right, PPE, masks, gloves, wet wipes, and things like that became a lot more prevalent. And so we did initially add them as custom items, so optional subsets, so they could be tracked going forward. But they've actually been added as full-fledged items now that are permanently part of the data sheet. Unfortunately, They weren't common before COVID, so we weren't able to see. We weren't tracking them before that, so we weren't able to actually record like the increase very directly. But we did notice the uptick, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Now I'm not seeing any more questions. So if anyone has anything else they would like to ask, you can pop it into the questions box. If we don't get to answer everything, we will make sure to pass that on to Hillary, and she can answer that afterwards. But for now, I think we will pass this on to Rebecca to wrap us up for the day a little bit early.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hillary, for taking the time to present to us. It's always interesting to see the expansive realm of citizen science within NOAA, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you all for taking the time to be with us today, asking so many thoughtful questions. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Our Citizen Science webinar series is going to be continuing on into the month of April for Citizen Science Month. We will actually be featuring me. I will be the speaker for April. We will be going over what I just finished as my capstone project for my master's program. I did an instructional unit on how to help new citizen science organize and outline their own projects. So I'll be talking through some of the visual aids, the graphic organizers, as well as some of the training materials that I created to help new citizen science get started in the world of research and community involvement. So if you're able to join us, that will be on April 18th. It'll be on the third Thursday of the month. We hope you can take the time out of your day to celebrate Citizen Science Month with us. Thank you.